Council, as well as the updated sea level rise guidance from the state that will help us determine which sea level rise scenarios to use within our assessment, as well as the work that has been done that was discussed here earlier this morning, where we can work with these different agencies to pull in that information and inform the vulnerability and risk assessment. Also, in terms of methodologies, a lot of work has been done around the Bay, particularly BCDC with the Adapting to Rising Tides project that has been going on for a number of years, developed a methodology to help in risk and vulnerability assessments, as well as in the adaptation planning phase. There's also the Silicon Valley 2.0 project. Recently, the city of LA conducted a risk and vulnerability assessment for their coastal assets. So there's a lot of work been done that we can tap into. We'll also tap into is the fortunate thing for San Mateo County is that there hasn't been any major flooding in recent years. There are other places in the U.S., such as New Orleans and New York, that did experience major flooding, and some members of our team are currently working in those places, have seen what the impacts of inundation are to certain assets, and can work with different asset owners here in the region to help identify what makes an asset vulnerable. And other experience applies as well, such as the effectiveness, say, of wetlands to reduce storm surge height. A lot of great information was developed as people experienced Hurricane Katrina or Superstorm Sandy that could apply to San Mateo County as well. So focusing on the risk and vulnerability assessment, for those of you that are less familiar with the process, it's what we're doing here is part of a bigger flow of activities to ultimately come up with an implementable adaptation strategy. And our project focuses on step 1 and 2 of this cycle. And for the vulnerability assessment, key questions are what assets are exposed to inundation, how vulnerable are these assets to inundation, and what are the consequences if they get inundated. Key activity will be to collect information on all the assets that are in the inundation zone. The listing on the right provides an overview of potential asset categories to look at. We will be developing criteria to create priorities, whether it's related to life safety, the economic impacts, environmental impacts, or social justice impacts. And what these criteria do, it will allow us to better understand the impacts of flooding on a particular asset, but it will also inform the adaptation planning if something is very important for multiple reasons. Then we can carry that forward as part of this project. Once we have a good overview of the assets that are present within the county, and for this, we're working with the county's GIS department, and potentially for select data sets will come to individual cities as needed. And this is an example of New Orleans. We will be overlaying the information of the assets with a inundation map, and we're using the tool from the Our Coast, Our Future website to create new inundation maps under different sea level rise scenarios. And that will basically give a broad brush overview of which assets are in the inundation zone under various conditions. What this will lead to is an overview of potentially vulnerable assets. As this will be GIS based, we can provide the information in different assets, but most likely will be that we can provide a city-by-city overview of assets that are in the flood zone under different sea level rise scenarios. And the example that you see here is from a similar exercise that was recently conducted in the Delta for a island-by-island vulnerability assessment of assets in the Delta. From there, with this list of all the assets that are vulnerable to the impacts of sea level rise, we will select a subset of 30 representative assets. We will be selecting that subset with the county and conservancy and with you all as we're progressing in this project that are representative for assets that are important to the stakeholders in the community, but also provide a broad overview of, say, assets that are present. So it could be critical functions such as hospitals or police stations, but it can also be, say, wetlands or the Bay Trail or other functions, depending on the preferences as we move forward in this project. Next, the final phase of our project is to do a brief study on potential adaptation responses. And adaptation planning in this case is important because it helps people imagine what a future with sea level rise would look like, but also it helps with communicating a vision for what the future of San Mateo could be. And these are some examples of, say, physical interventions in the landscape, but adaptation planning is not just limited to that. There are many other, say, what they call non-structural adaptation measures that could be considered to reduce risk, such as zoning, different building codes, communicating about risk, evacuation plans, etc. So the timeline for this project, we just got started. So we're currently, this is our official kickoff meeting today. It's about a 12-month process. You can see here how these, the different activities that I just described will be rolled out over the coming months. Some activities will happen concurrently. There are a number of engagement points in time where we will be meeting with you again. And this is where I will hand it over to Dave to briefly speak about that. And then after that, we'll be available for questions and answers.
Thanks, Peter, for kind of giving us the overview of how we'll be moving forward. But I just want to take a moment to emphasize where we'll need your help and how important it is that we collect your insights. This is not the type of thing where we're just going to say, Peter and Arcadis, bring your report back in a year and we'll take a look at it. So there's a couple of specific things I'd like to highlight. First, on the data gathering on these assets. We are going to need help from people in each of the cities and the special districts, the agencies, our companies, that have a real understanding, a detailed understanding of the shoreline or the coastside and the assets that may be vulnerable. So we've already engaged some of these individuals in some work we did with the San Francisco Estuary Institute to help them work on some of their mapping tools. But we will be reaching out to you to identify people, again, who have this really on-the-ground knowledge. So our plan is we'll be meeting with them individually and collecting information through questionnaires, but we also want to bring that group together in a couple of convenings to report on our progress and to get input as to how we're going to categorizing these assets. So there will be convenings of this technical team. Also, we're going to need help on the policy side. As we think about setting priorities and picking out the 30 assets that we particularly want to do a deep analysis of, we're going to ask policymakers from same stakeholders I mentioned before to come together and to give us input. And then finally, we are working on a public outreach plan, and one of the big things we want to do over the 12 months is just to increase public awareness of this issue and to expose the public to what we're working on, and also solicit their input. So we're working out the specifics how to do that. But one thing that we're excited to pursue is a project called Owls, which is shown here. So Owls and the company Owl Eyes has come up with this really interesting technology, as we all remember from our days, our tourism. You put the little quarter in the viewer and you go out and look at the scenery. Well, what the Owl Eyes company has done is they have the outside box may look like that, but inside they basically have mapping software and very sophisticated imaging software. So when you look through the lens, you can look at a future projection of whatever you want to map. So in this case, you would look at the future of what sea level rise would look like in San Mateo County. So we've had discussions with them, and FEMA is interested in perhaps supporting us here, and we envision that this would be a big part of our public outreach. These owls have been deployed in Marin, so if you're up in that area, you can keep an eye out for them. So again, we will be starting today with an exercise on mapping, but we will be following up with everyone really has a stake in this process to collect your input, and we'll have these other convenings over the course of the 12-month process. So we've done an awful lot of talking. We're going to take some Q&A and then take a break, and then we'll come back and do this mapping exercise. So Peter would probably happy to entertain your questions.
Or questions to Dave, of course. Sir.
This is being recorded, so those of you that have questions, we'll need to have you guys speak into the mic, please. Otherwise, we can hear you, but the recording cannot.
Peter, there are several models of sea level rise currently available for various sections of the bay. You mentioned our CoStar Future is potentially your principal one. How are you going to address those other models? One of our concerns is that because that information is out there, people would say, well, you're using the wrong information, hence your conclusions are wrong. How are you going to deal with that? That's an issue that we're looking at right now.
So while it is correct that there are various models out there in terms of what say projected water levels are on their different sea level rise scenarios, our CoStar Future model is supported by USGS data and very detailed data. So that's the primary source. We will have high dynamic modelers that will be validating the data that we're getting from the our Future model to make sure that the inundation the inundation maps that are the output of this project is indeed true and validated. So it's not that we'll just pull the information from the tool without further QA, QC. And the modelers that we're using are both people from USGS as well as on our side of the team to make sure that the data that we use is as accurate as possible.
Hi, Cliff Luntz, Mayor Pro Tem with the City of Brisbane. One of your slides showed a really nice green space with the cityscape behind it. So when you're looking at potential examples and models, will you be incorporating things like art in beautiful landscaping, things that maybe will be a draw for people to come and participate near the water's edge, while also providing that functionality of keeping the sea at bay?
Very good question, and I think as we're progressing in the adaptation planning part of this study, it's to a large extent a function of, say, the preferences of the people within the county of what they would like their shoreline to look like, and say natural ecosystem-focused measures are currently in place around San Francisco Bay, and I think that they're very popular moving forward. They provide great protection, great access to the water, and I think those are definitely part of the portfolio of options that we're looking at. And I think under the leadership of County Supervisor Pine, you don't have to be worried that you'll see a big wall along the waterfront, but you'll enjoy the beautiful vistas that are there today, and where you incorporate this this multi-functionality of ecosystem, recreation, protection into the future design of the shoreline.
Hi, Sabrina Brennan, San Mateo County Harbor District. I haven't heard much discussed about the Bay Trail and the Coastal Trail, and it seems like this would be a tremendous opportunity to make trail improvements and bring more attention to those assets. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
So those particular assets will definitely be incorporated as part of the vulnerability and risk assessment. And as I said, as we're selecting the resources part of this project are finite, but as we're selecting representative assets that we'll be investigating in more detail, these are types of assets that, while say their economic value might be small compared to some others, they do provide a very important linkage to the community in terms of recreation or linkages in terms of commuting or et cetera. So those are assets that we will be incorporating as part of this study, and we have good connections also with BCDC to look at the Bay Trail as well as jurisdictions on the coast side to make sure that those assets will be considered as part of the study.
Hi, I'm Helen Fisicaro with the Town of Colma, but I also chair the Colma Creek Advisory Committee. And we have some projects right now in the queue that probably should be checked into. I know that's information you're going to collect for your study, but so we're not working in silos because we're really all related. So how do you propose the advisory committees, you have several on the list, maybe put on the brakes for a little bit and listen to what's going forward with the study before we move forward with our projects so that they're in sync?
Right. So I think we're literally just getting started, but one of our priorities is to meet with the different folks representing current projects so that we understand what's going on and how those align with this study. So we'll definitely be in touch, and hopefully that's within the next 4 to 6 weeks.
And if I might add there, the study that Dilip from Moffitt and Nichols described is very close to final, and we will be presenting that to the Colma Creek Advisory Committee. And I think it's going to provide an excellent foundation to think about, what we need to do next in that watershed. As it turns out, the only place that we really have any real revenue for flood control is in the Colma Creek, which is kind of a historic accident. But we now are going to have a very good report, and we have a funding stream. So I think we can do some good work in that area.
We have a,
I was going to say, as we're about 15 minutes over our agenda, we'll take one more question, and then we'll go into the break, because I'm sure that everyone's looking forward to some coffee or other refreshments. And of course, we're available for questions throughout this morning.
and there will be an additional Q&A session at the close. So we'll have our mapping sessions, and we'll be back in here. We'll give a little regroup to everyone of what came out of those mapping sessions, and there'll be another opportunity for questions before we wrap up. So you're not done.
Thank you. Bob Cormier, Foothill College. I think it's great that you're targeting 1 meter of sea level rise for the first estimate of what we need to build. But just a comment and a reminder that if we don't really take seriously our carbon infrastructure, in 50 years, we might be looking at a 2 meter wall. And
sorry, but and the question is?
for everyone in this room to think about, what are we doing today so that we're not here 50 years thinking about a 2 meter wall or worse?
So,
More a question for John Spear.
well, I think, in terms of adaptation planning, you do need to take, future adaptability in mind, so that whatever you design today can be adapted in the future. I think a 100-year planning horizon is a very long time. So, I don't think there would be the intent to build something for the next 200 years, but at least build it as such that it can be adapted in the future would be a key recommendation. So with that, thanks everyone, and we'll see each other at 10:45 again.
Thank you. That was a perfect answer.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Henry Pontarelli with Lisa Wise Consulting. Very, very pleased to be part of the consulting team. Very pleased to be part of this project. As Supervisor Pine and Peter pointed out, this is the point in the workshop and the first point in our project where we are reaching out to the community, reaching out to local stakeholders to gather information, to gather your perspective on the highest risks and the highest priority assets in San Mateo County. Also, as they said, this is the first opportunity that stakeholders are going to get to engage in the process and provide information and refine information. There'll be subsequent workshops. We'll be working closely also with a policy working group and a technical working group as those are formed in the next several months. The intent of this information gathering is to guide the consultant team in our research and to ultimately be evident in the key findings and the final recommendations. So it's a very important exercise. To this end, we've created 4 information gathering stations that include maps, a list of preliminary concepts on risk and how risk is evaluated, The stations have aerial maps. As you can see, there's a depiction of the maps on the coast side here. And we'll have stickers at the table. The stickers are numbered, so you'll be able to describe when you'll be able to identify a physical location on the map and then describe that location or augment that your choice. There'll also be members of the consultant team and representative from the county, representative from the project will be taking notes and engaging in conversation at the stations. Multiple stickers are okay. If we see a lot of stickers on one thing, that will certainly give us a better idea of the breadth and the intensity of interest on that particular asset. Again, this is our first step in the community, the outreach to stakeholders. So we're just trying to gain a very high level perspective of what the communities feel is the highest priority assets, and to get your input on the risks. So we have a list of these preliminary concepts on risk and how risk is evaluated, and we'll also be discussing that at the information stations, and we'll be taking notes. One of the stations is right here. Obviously, this is the coast side, and there's 4 other stations. The bay side is cut up is divided into 3 sections. The northern section is in this room right next to us, around the corner, and that station goes from the San Francisco-San Mateo County line to SFO. And in the foyer are the 2 other stations, the mid section that covers from Millbrae to Foster City, and then the southern end of the county on the bay side is this table, or this station right here, and that covers from Belmont to the South County line. We have 50 minutes for this, or we set aside 50 minutes for this. So, if it takes you a few minutes to get situated, I think that leaves sufficient time. Please spend as much of that time as you feel is appropriate at that station where you have the greatest amount of experience or expertise, and you can share that with the team. We'll also hopefully have time that you can move to some of the other stations to hear what the priorities are in other areas of the county. After that, the consultant team will come back and it will regather in this room, and we'll go over some of the key priorities or the key concepts that we've heard at each one of these stations. Certainly, we're going to do a more detailed summary, but we're going to kind of give the group here a flavor for what we gathered. Following this will be another opportunity for Q&A, where you'll be able to ask questions of the consultant team, of our generous funding partners, the California Coastal Conservancy, or Supervisor Pine or Supervisor Horsley. So with that, let's get started. Like I said, the coast side map is here, and we've got the bay side is cut up into north, central, and south. So, and there'll be members of our team there taking notes. Thank you. Project area. Okay, so here's stickers. I mean, stickers. Well, to identify those areas or assets that you feel are most important. Well, we'll engage in dialogue and we'll take notes on things you feel that are the most important, including the numbers. You have a couple numbers that you want to. Let's see.
Say hi. It's been a while.
Deborah. Yeah. Now,
San Mateo
so
County.
what job did you get over here?
I'm a legislative supervisor.
Oh, great.
So, but I have a name tag that's just been homeless since
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know that there's still yet to be started dollars there with the 100,000 I give up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's kind of an issue in that our year starts on October 1st and ends September 30th.
Yeah.
We got the money on the premise that this project's going to start a couple months earlier than it started. So, sounds like talking with one of the Arcadas, I have a couple days breathing room because the person I was going to beg for forgiveness is at the floodplain managers conference. So we have, well, actually, got even a weirder story than that, but that's an accounting issue. We got money sent, we started spending it, they go, send the money back, it's the wrong color money. And then our guys are saying, well, we don't want to send the money back, we get new money, so I got to work out that issue. But we're given most of our line shares this year. I'd like to try and slide it to next year, but we have problems sliding stuff, so we may have to do something now, because we get judged on execution, and execution means how much money is spent. So we want to do something that's really productive to the study.
Yeah.
So I'll try and beg Joel on that.
So I have a interior question. My region for the county is
Pescadero? Okay, so you worked for San Mateo County, and it was the San Mateo County RA, what is that for? Research Conservation Division. Spent some money with CBAC and flood solution what appears to be is that you have this natural low draining area, and 90% of the solution is not going to work there.
Yeah. And I know
Yeah,
that
for the-
with zero responsibility, we're working
Into
on
this.
Sarah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so
Well, yeah, you want to talk to them.
I do talk to
Because we have stuff called the floodplain management system.
yes, and I
Might be able to work
Well,
on that.
I think these are all.
Is there, so there's, how big is the salmon population? We have spawning salmon, so it would probably sell better as a 206. I'll go to it. If we could do that, something like that. So, yeah, we just about.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I can come on down. Yeah. So apparently, the way I found out about it was my boss, Jim Hughes, whether it was I'm not sure. And then I followed up. I was at a conference where I saw Chris.
Okay, so water treatment, sewer.
Chris Hammer and
Pillar Ridge is not vulnerable, actually.
Pardon?
Pillar Ridge is not vulnerable. This,
Okay, well, we're here to get your priorities. Those are their priorities.
I'm just saying, as a physical matter, the sea level rise plus
he's based in Sacramento. So
plus
surprised.
maximum
And Chris is
flood inundation map stops short of Pillar Ridge.
Stops short of
So
Pillar.
I would
Yeah.
think probably
I saw some.
we're either not going to be able to help.
I thought that the inundation map was supposed
Get
to
the top
be
points.
revised.
We'll go back there.
You've got the harbor area.
Well, maybe that's true, I don't know, but the mapping was done for, Coast Commission insisted on for the Big Wave project, stops short of Pillar Ridge. Okay, all right, okay.
There's many elements within that harbor area.
I better throw it out right now. And
Yeah, that doesn't matter, doesn't hurt, I know.
The harbor itself.
So if the sedimentation problem,
Pillar Point Harbor.
Yes, yes.
Johnson.
Yeah. And
You've got our sewer treatment plant.
Yeah, we've got the.
Half Bay Sewer
So when I
Treatment.
go back, when we go up, back up and report back, we're going to talk about sewer, water treatment. We've got some environmental
Natural
concerns here,
yeah.
habitat
Okay, and
concerns.
Seal Cove, Seal Cove, the bluffs at Seal Cove
Erosion.
are
Okay.
yeah, it's not only coastal erosion, but there's also the Seal Cove fault that influences, that is causing collapse and retreat of those bluffs. So it's, and it threatens your your sewer lines.
Well,
Except you moved it. You moved it. I mean, it did at one time. They had it.
right, that line.
so you're going to put it in the new.
Yeah.
There's the Volume bluffs.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Belmar.
Bluffs are probably going to be an erosion problem as well. Volume.
VALL.
No,
VALL.
Oh, Vijama.
VIL. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So besides issues of here we're going to talk about erosion. What the bluffs? Do they have impacts on other infrastructure? Potential impacts on other infrastructure?
Those are actually natural at the moment, and there's some development that may be proposed there, I understand. Belmar Bluffs.
You're with me? Yes.
There's also also some structures there.
We actually have a sewer line that is threatened by erosion right now. Infrastructure project plans to move the line.
Okay.
Right now due to erosion.
So both of these, the impacts that are happening in both of these places have trickled down
This one's-
effects on
that
sewer
one's
line.
probably gone. That one's gone. That got moved. That got moved. That was historic.
Okay. So this took money that we could have invested in schools and other infrastructure to do that. Okay.
That was quite a while ago.
Okay. Anything else? Where I kind of scoot
yeah.
back around there. The easel failed.
Oh, it did.
The easel failed. Yeah. We have to invest in other
Others
easels.
are writing directly on the map.
Good.
You know, depending upon how much white space they have.
Yeah, I actually put Pescadero on there too because Pescadero is not in your
Study area.
study area.
That's why I came up to talk to you, because I heard you had a question about why the study area. OCOF was a foundation study area. They only went to Half Moon Bay in their analysis and collaboration with USGS. So our data south of Half Moon Bay has not been validated by anybody, but we're looking into that as part of this project. At a point, we had to commit to a study area, and so we are working and looking into this with USGS and what OCOF might be able to pull together. So our coast, our future, pull together as a tool of all these different resources that you're able to utilize in the sense of types of studies over time, and this tool you literally can watch the sea level rise over different scenarios. And so that becomes our foundation, but they only had data from Half Moon Bay North.
Okay.
Okay.
We need to make sure it doesn't get left out entirely. One
No.
way or another.
Right. So we didn't want to overcommit and not have and be able
Not be able to do it.
Yeah.
Or have a different standard or a different.
Right, and we have reached, Kelly from Coastal Conservancy has reached out to the USGS on that, relative to that. But at some point in time, we really had to call it and continue to move on. But we're still having those conversations.
Yeah, Pescadero. We actually, when I heard about that, we actually like.
I told them why it's necessary.
You asked that question right in front of Supervisor Erosion.
No, it's because Jim explained why.
Yeah, it's because the OCOF data, we're gonna try to close that data gap, and we're trying to do a fundraising.
Yeah.
effort
So
because we need that
access to
for
the beach as well will be
projects
affected.
where we have data from USGS and reporting to
The beach
conservation.
the beach is disappearing. Actual disappearing of the beach.
We really want to get to the full restoration. We have to get this done first. This is what's been funded by the Conservancy. But I need people that understand the agencies we're talking about. And we were just talking about Pescadero.
Yeah, let's go. Do you guys mind if we focus on this? And I had an easel failure. I had easel failure. I know. I need to invest in better easels, or I need easel insurance.
And I
So let's.
So does, I was just curious, don't forget to start down to have them there showing the whole.
see, but that's the problem.
Shark Park has a berm and it also has
What's on the map ought to be Martinsville.
That's, yeah, it's
and the golf course.
Have a direct effect.
Okay,
Move
so,
the timeline.
talking third chapter.
I hear enough to be dangerous.
Probably be the most contentious place in the city.
And so the impacts are the berm, the wetland, and the golf course.
Right.
Is there other?
Further thinking about
and the more we can do for the Marshall. I think that
because in Montero, we're so hot.
So the issue is how best to protect the homes, the sides of the
Thursday morning or Friday.
Okay, the homes there is just in general. treatment number
Zone or whatever that baseline is.
52.
Stops.
What's the name of that part?
And if you really look at it, the airport wells is much further away, and there's actually elevation.
I know.
What are the numbers?
As a matter of fact, the south end of the runway is 40 feet, and the north end is 67
Starting
feet.
to, some sewer, water treatment.
And there's also
sewers,
the
impacts that they'll have on above ground and below ground infrastructure.
But if,
Okay, we have some,
so the question is the
erosion.
they think they're on the zone. If you try to get those included in there, that means they'll take a second look at it.
Did we catch those when we talked about
in an area
Sharp Park and Rockaway, or are there others? Maybe it's got that gradient. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what?
Okay.
I would phrase this maybe differently. And
Thank you.
assets. I thought about it. I mean, there's a slight potential to see sea level rise. There's so much flow, you know.
So,
What is it called?
Hydrostatic pressure.
okay. He's got some ideas here. Maybe we should go through them and
Pushes the seawater out. It should.
sounds cool. I just want to make sure that we catch.
But it's going to have an effect on the aquifer, yes.
Tell me about beach and pump station. And what's okay? What's at risk?
Okay, so what does that mean? Well, here, so here's my 2 cents. That first of all, although that map is really nice and stuff like that, we need easy to use, properly positioned.
So where is
screens? Yeah. Right.
No, we got it. I got it. It's okay. We'll be able to.
Well, wait. So you want to bring a screen up from the ceiling, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's no way around, having you guys leave or Dr. Lynn lower if you have a presentation now.
Well, I think we're
talking about access to the
right can swivel this around, and because he can come in that corner. Yeah. Yeah. So he's got. Yeah. There's no wiggle room. Is there any way that they can change their technology a little bit so you can have those microphones sitting there and all that clutter?
Yeah. Quite frankly, a lot of times they'll tell us the microphones aren't needed.
No, we're gonna. Yeah, I had an easel problem.
And see what their needs are. But
I would even argue that they need something like you have, stand up or sit down, because I think that if somebody speaks in front of us, we want to do everything possible.
So this is all against erosion and potential effects on sewers.
Or if they're more used to sitting down. It seems like that would be just
We had rock.
So Clarence, you get 5 times this. You throw it off 5 brilliant ideas. You have everybody else throw it off 5 brilliant ideas.
Advantage is
Yeah, we had an easel.
Unless we gang up on you,
Well, it's so cool.
Linda Mar Pump Station.
okay. Holding is a good idea.
I really.
Needs to be a very small.
Okay.
She just left. Yeah.
As long as it's just big enough to throw a legal pin down. It gives somebody that sort of psychological sense.
Hotel.
Oh, and if they be able to reach their nose.
Really well. It's done.
Okay.
Yeah, that may be exactly that. An arm coming off. What I can do is I can come in one morning and I'll bring my little laser measure and I'll bring my laptop and I'll give you a dimension drawing of space.
Mention this.
Council chamber.
We should probably do this every
Yeah.
looking at our computers.
Where's the beach boulevard?
Refresh, do a refresh.
So I think that
Okay.
a dimension
I can very simply when you're in office.
a table is so easily
Make
constructed.
sure that it's
Yeah.
and they were able to double check.
Yeah, I could do that.
Get it, walk them together and I'll find out where it was.
We have a
and fix that.
Okay, you know what for Mike is plastic
Well,
now,
they
right?
assemble
I,
it so
it's so
pretty.
so much that
Let's face it,
countertop. I have all the stuff.
there you go, that's a good one. I think it's the resources management things because I have the documents. We need that.
Okay. Yeah, we're starting to see some
Well, and I like to be able to do.
underground infrastructure, sewer, ripple effect, and then there's homes.
All right, then. And then Harvey, where was last night? Harvey. Yeah, so we were there last night. He mentioned you and.
Oh, yeah, the pier. Pacific Pier. And that is that the
He
beach
was
boulevard.
great. Yes, the Kehoe. Well, we've already been to last night. Oh, Kelly. Okay, so we're gonna be
Yeah. This is the first day. I'm trying to
and then actually call out when it's the 18th. And we're doing it. Yeah. Okay, so you come to, 6 and 3 at,
you're technically the emergency.